Welcome to the Cult of Domesticity podcast, a podcast about history, true crime, and whatever life brings us. I'm Courtney, and every week I am joined by another fascinating person. Let's see what we're going to talk about this week. Hey guys, July 13th is coming up soon, and if you want to meet me and a bunch of my podcasting friends, about 80 of them, come down to the True Crime Podcast Festival at the Marriott downtown, right on the Magnificent Mile, right by the Bean in that beautiful park. So I'm excited to see some of my favorites. All Crime No Cattle, Ignorance Was Bliss, Nature vs. Narcissism, Paranormal Chicks, The Getting Off podcast, Dark Poutine. All of your indie favorites are going to be there, as well as a lot of the big names. This is a full day event, and the sooner you sign up, the cheaper it's going to be. So make sure you sign up soon. And there's going to be meet and greets. I'll be there. I have ordered some things. So if you're there, you might get some exclusive goodies. And, there's some amazing events going on. Some panels like, Getting Off and LA Not So Confidential are doing a live episode as part of this. There's also amazing panel with Court Junkie, Misconduct, and Pretend Radio. So really, why haven't you bought your tickets yet? I already have, and I hope to see you there. Welcome back, devotees. This week, we're with Augie from the Short Stories of Augie Peterson!
Hey!
And this has been, I don't know, it feels like 6 months in the planning, but
like
that's
that.
just because...
Since I started my podcast a year ago, something like that.
You've been slowly campaigning. Just
put me on the show.
Really, it just takes an email and being like, I'm willing to research things. Fair.
Yep.
Will you be willing to hear horrible things? Yes? Okay, cool.
Will you be willing to get lost down rabbit trails of those horrible things? Also, yes.
Do you want random fun facts no one's asked for?
Absolutely.
Like, I gave one at work today, and you probably would appreciate this one. For some reason, we were talking about toilet humor.
Oh, fun.
And actually, no, we were talking about that old A&E show, like 1,000 Ways to Die, like the dumbest ways to die.
Oh my god, I love that show.
And my friend a while ago told me, if you clean your toilet with bleach, you have to make sure you flush it right away. Because if someone accidentally goes to the bathroom, the ammonia in your urine mixes with the bleach, and it makes, I think, chlorine gas, and it knocks you out, so then you fall off the toilet.
I have heard that.
And you're just like, but I need to clean my toilet with bleach. And so your thought is, someone was like letting it soak or something, and someone else wet, and that's how we figured it out.
Oh, God.
And you're just like, oh, gosh. Yeah, and then we were just talking about different ways that people have died on that show, which are all ridiculous. Like, I think it was the woman whose breast implants exploded on the plane.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Classic.
And there were two people that didn't believe that happened. And it's like, no, it's not an urban myth. That actually happened to a woman. They had to fix how they did that. Because
oh my god,
a lot of people have them, and that's not good to have exploding boobies, apparently.
Who knew?
Who knew? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast before we start?
I would love to. Sure. My name is Augie Peterson. I am a writer of horror. I do short stories on my blog, The Short Stories of Augie Peterson. Then I have another blog where I review really bad horror movies. It's called Snark in the Dark. And I take those two blogs and I put them on a podcast, and I do weekly episodes where I alternate stories and movie reviews. And then once a month, I feature independent artists that I want the world to know about, and that's a lot of fun. It's called Features Week. I have 2 short story collections up available on Amazon that I self-published, and I also host a podcast with my cat that I publish on Patreon, and I think that's everything.
I just binged the 3 or 4 episodes on Insidious.
Oh, yeah, Insidious.
Insidious, and I just love your like, why are there more of these? What happened? And I was like, you told me there was 4, and I was like, wait, there's 4?
Yeah.
I remember 2. And then I probably was in grad school and just didn't have mental capacity for it. And I'm like, there's 4 of these.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And And, like, in the end, you're just like, why?
Yeah, basically.
Besides money?
It pretty much, yeah. And it's so depressing. Like, I'm not gonna go into the episode now, because you'll just get me started, like, going crazy. But it's just so crazy to see the progression of the series as it goes, because the original person who came up with the idea didn't even stick around to the fourth movie to see how it would happen. He's just like, I'm gonna make the first one, and then I'm gonna leave. See ya. And they just kind of made the rest of the movies. Like, why not? Money, right? Sure.
That's always a horrible sign when, if you love the first one, and that team just dissipates, and you're just like, I'm gonna go because it's gonna get real bad.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm trying to think of another movie that's like that, where you go see the first one, you're like, it's so good, and then you go see the second one, you're like, oh, no one is the same in this.
Yeah.
They paid the actors enough money to come back, but no one else clearly is the same. Like, not even, like, the set designer, and you're just sitting there like,
what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did this go from a movie to, like, a sci-fi special real quick? Or, like, my favorite, one of my favorite horrible movies, Airplane versus Volcano, which is an hour and a half.
I still need to watch that.
It's an hour and a half. And I watched all of it.
Oh my god.
It has the guy who played Superman, I believe, on TV, not like the Smallville.
Oh, I gotcha.
Like it was like the 90s Superman guy is in the movie.
Oh my god. How?
And it's an hour and a half.
Wow.
And during the movie, you're like, this is a conclusion thing. Airplane, Volcano, we know which one wins.
Right, yeah.
And at the end of the movie, you really don't know who wins.
Oh, that's horrible. I need to review that. That sounds so good.
It's like I think I sent you Three-Headed Shark Attack.
Yeah, you did. You sent me like 4 movies that one day, and I'm like writing them all down and putting them on lists everywhere so I can review them all.
I'm a fan of crappy movies because why? It makes you feel better because someone pitched this idea.
Exactly.
Got it funded. They made a movie.
It spent millions of dollars to make this movie. The first Insidious movie cost $10 million to make, and that's considered a low-budget movie. Like, what? How?
I've got $1. Can I make a movie? Well, we'll see if this is going to be a movie.
Oh, God.
By the way, if you listeners, if you stick around to the end, David Attenborough shows up, and who knows if I don't know, I'm almost through my whiskey, so maybe the accent will come out. The one really solid British accent I have is David Attenborough. We're going to the UK.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to talk about Julia Martha Thomas.
Okay.
And, her murder.
Sweet.
Because... And for those of you who are new, we're not saying like sweet, yay, she's dead, but just we love a good old story.
I have collabed with too many true crime podcasts. I am so sorry.
No, you're fine. I just feel like my favorite murder apology. We're not laughing at the victims. We're laughing at the scenario and the crime.
Exactly.
So our perpetrator was born Catherine Lawler in 1849 in Kilgane County, Wexford, in the Irish Republic. So we're in Ireland.
Nice.
I'm gonna try not to slip into accents because it might happen.
Oh God.
And I'm sorry.
I'll be right there with you if it happens. Don't apologize.
You can listen to my Hammersmith Ghost episode on Patreon if you want to hear me do a bunch of accents that aren't good. They're not good. I'm better with my horrible French accent and my horrible Boston accent, but that's not happening. So Catherine begins her criminal career at an early age. She apparently married a sea captain called Webster, and this is all according to her. So we're taking that little pinch of salt. We're not salt baying this. We're just taking a little pinch out of her account, and accordingly had 4 children because probably Irish Catholic.
Probably.
Not judging you, but it's just the time period. Yep. Then she moves to Liverpool, stealing her money for the fair, and then just stealing up a storm. In Liverpool, she's like, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. And by the age of 18, she gets a 4-year prison sentence. Not a fun prison. I'm going to assume there is hay on the ground.
Oh, no.
If that.
Oh, God.
So you got thrushes on the ground, in probably like a castle, and a bunch of people in a room. If you think pretty much prisons, we think prisons are bad now. In that period, it's like playing a game of sardines.
Oh, no.
But with poor hygiene and probably mice and rats.
Oh, God.
And lice and worse food.
No. That sounds...
Poldark does a really good, and Penny Dreadful, I believe, do really good interpretations of, like, mental health in prisons.
Yeah.
So check them out. Especially, I know Poldark has the prisons down. And that doesn't change, guys, for a while. We think prison reform happens late. It happens real late. So once she gets out of prison, she goes to London, as everyone does, and becomes a cleaner. And guess what she's still doing? Cleaning out her employer's possession, and then bounces.
Nice.
So a little cleaning here, a little putting this in my pocket there, some cleaning, some putting things in your pocket. Those skirts, man, you could hide a lot of things, like snacks, some jewels, some silver, so many things.
She's the reason that maid outfits are so short now. I understand. That was a terrible joke. I'm so sorry.
Like, what? Are you thinking like the French maids where they're just like it's barely halfay down your thigh and you're just like...
I don't think it connects.
Like, what do you even hide in there?
Yeah.
You hide your employer in there. That's what you...
Oh my god.
This is a reminder. This is an explicit podcast. So, 1873, she settles in the Rose Gardens at London's Hammersmith area, which I only know from the Hammersmith Apollo, so we're gonna keep moving. She makes friends with her next-door neighbors, Henry and Anne Porter. So, such British names, good English names. And we'll come back to them. She then gets a job at Notting Hill, which was kind of just as fancy as it is today. Probably a little less fancy, upper middle class. Not Hugh Grant fancy.
We can never be that fancy in real life.
No. I mean, it's not attainable for me.
No.
But that's fine. She's working for a Captain Woolsbest, and
sorry.
In this time,
you just like spat that out.
It's a British name. My thesis was in 18th century British Empire. These are normal names. Sorry.
At least you're not second guessing yourself. You're just confident. You're doing it.
It's not the weirdest one I've had to say, unfortunately.
Wow.
And she meets a man named Strong. She meets a strong man.
Can't marry rich, marry strong, right?
Nope, doesn't marry him. She lives with him and gets pregnant.
Oh.
So,
okay.
She has her son the 19th of April, 1847, and then was promptly abandoned by Mr. Strong, so he wasn't that strong.
What a classy guy. Physically strong, not emotionally strong.
Yes. So, since she has no means of supporting herself, she goes back to, guess what? Stealing things.
Wow.
She's very good at it until she's not.
Well.
And she gets a couple more prison sentences, collecting them. Like, can't think of a good thing that you collect now.
Coins? Stamps? Pokemon cards?
Yes, she collects them like Pokemon cards. She's gotta catch them all. So she gets released from Wandsworth in 1877, and she tries to go back to domestic work, which for women is the most stable form of work you can get, unless you're working in a shop. But even then, we're getting Industrial Revolution style, so time period. Firstly, she works for the Mitchell family in Teddington, and she's like, yeah, they didn't have anything worth stealing, so she kind of moves on. She keeps using several aliases, including Webster and Lawler, so she's going between a bunch of different names. She makes friends with Sarah Crease, who is also a domestic servant, because what people don't realize, like, if you're like a middle-class family and you'll give your servant a day off, so they all go to the same places, because people pretty much have the same day off, which is Sunday.
Yeah.
You get your half day, you get to go to church, and then maybe something else, and then you gotta go back to work.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Go see God on your own time.
And if you skip church, you're a heathen, and I'm gonna fire you.
Exactly, pretty much. Go to church. Well, you didn't go to church? I mean, if you're a good servant, you probably could get away with it, but...
You have to be real good.
Real good. Sarah took care of Kate's son during every time Kate was in prison. So poor Sarah.
Yeah.
This is not even her child. So on January 13th, 1879, Kate enters the service of Mrs. Julia Martha Thomas. Such a formal name.
Yeah.
At number 2 Vine Cottages, Park Road, Richmond. So near London. And they get on really well. And she was like, I'm so happy to be working here. And Mrs. Thomas is an eccentric woman in her mid-50s. So she's married, kind of just running her household as upper middle class women are apt to do. Mm-hmm. But then Kate's problems show up again.
Oh, no.
She's not really good at her job.
Oh, no.
Also, she likes to go visit local pubs.
Oh, no.
And she's like reprimanding her because she likes, I think they clicked personality-wise, but you know, when your stuff isn't getting done and she's coming back drunk all the time.
Yeah.
Eventually, she has to give Kate notice and she's like, you'll be done Friday, February 28th. So this might have been a problem for Mrs. Thomas in that Kate begins to act up and Mrs. Thomas stays with friends and relatives or has them over so they stay with her when Kate's in the house.
Oh, jeez.
You know.
Like you do.
As you do with your servant. You're terrified of them, so you have other people stay with you.
Oh, God.
So we get to Friday the 28th. Kate hasn't found a new job or a new place to live, and she's like, Mrs. Thomas, please let me stay over the weekend. And again, I think she just liked the girl, so she's like, oh, I guess woman.
Yeah.
She's had several children apparently at this point.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, Kate, you can stay for the remainder of the weekend, but then you have to be out. On Sunday morning, Mrs. Thomas goes off to church as usual, and Kate was allowed Sunday afternoons off from work, but had to be back in time for Mrs. Thomas to go to the evening service. So Kate goes to visit her son, which was her usual, thing. She'd go visit her son at Sarah's, and then go to the pub on her way back. Again, see the cycle of the problem. Mm-hmm. Back at the pub.
Yeah.
She got back late, which inconvenienced Mrs. Thomas, probably because she had to help her dress or change or do something, right. Who was late for church.
Oh, no.
You can't be late for church.
Oh, that's the worst thing.
So she shows up to church. Everyone realizes she's really agitated, and possibly because she was afraid her house was being robbed because Kate.
I mean, that's fair.
And Mrs. Thomas leaves church, goes home, and didn't ask anyone to accompany her.
Uh-oh.
We don't know what happens after this, but Kate told us some things.
Oh, boy. This ought to be good.
Do you want to hear what Kate said?
I'd love to hear what Kate said. Take a big old swig for
quote, Mrs. Thomas came in and went upstairs. I went up after her, and we had an argument, which ripened into a quarrel, and in the height of my anger and rage, I threw her from the top of the stairs to the ground floor. She had a heavy fall, and I became agitated at what had occurred, lost all control of myself, and to prevent her from screaming and getting me into trouble, I caught her by the throat, and in the struggle, she was choked, and I threw her on the ground, end quote.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we went immediately to, murder.
Yeah. That's 0 to 60. Wow.
We were fighting at the top of the stairs. Yeah. I threw her down, choked her out so she would be quiet. Okay, Kate.
But it wasn't my fault. She started it.
Not my fault. It's like, oh, honey, you're in 19th century England. You have class facing you. You're Irish in England. It's not going to work out. You murdered an upper middle class white woman.
Stop trying. It's good she admitted it right off the bat. Imagine if she had pled just completely innocent. She's like, well, she fell down the stairs and then, something wrapped around her neck. It's not a big deal. It was me. I was in another room.
Oh, no, other things happened, Pete. That's just what came out at trial.
Oh, my God.
We have some time.
Oh, my God.
We have some time. We're only, a fifth of the way into this.
Oh, I'm so ready.
At her trial, the prosecution did paint a little bit of a different picture, and so we're just kind of going chronologically. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Thomas's next-door neighbor, Mrs. Ives, heard the noise following the fall, followed by silence, and then, it was just you heard a thump, and she's like, huh, weird, and then just goes on with her day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no one knew what was gonna happen next, but Kate now has her employer's, or former employer's, body at the bottom of the stairs. What's a girl to do?
Oh, no.
Quote, I was determined to do away with the body as best I could. I chopped the head from the body with assistance of a razor, which I used to cut through the flesh afterwards. I also used the meat saw and the carving knife to cut the body up with. I prepared the copper with water to boil the body to prevent identity. And as soon as I had succeeded in cutting, I placed it in the copper and boiled it. I opened the stomach with the carving knife and burned up as much of the parts as I could. End quote.
Oh my god! Can we go back to when you decapitated her with a razor blade? She mentioned that before the butcher knife, so did she just take her whole head off with a razor blade? Like, jeez.
She Sweeney Todd this shit.
Wow.
So so in case you don't speak 19th century English, so she cut off the top of her head.
Oh my god.
And really used the meat saw and the carving knife to hack everything else up. So she's breaking down the body.
Jesus Christ.
And if you're a domestic servant, you probably cooked a little bit, so she might have known some butchery.
Yeah.
And she's boiling the head, because the copper is a copper pot.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. And then she proceeds to burn the organs.
Oh.
So.
Oh.
Don't worry, Kate was disgusted by the grossness of this as well.
At the very least. At least she was disgusted by what she had just done.
Necessity. And she either burnt or boiled all the body parts and then packed the remains into a wooden box, except for the head and one foot, because she couldn't fit them.
Okay.
And we'll get back to the head later. So there was a rumor going around that Kate had even tried to sell the fatty remains as the boilings from the bodies as drippings. So, like, fat that you can use for, like, greasing
making
things.
Candles and things. Like, oh, my god.
Yeah. And Mrs. Ives, the neighbor, reported a strange smell from next door, which was the body burning. Because, burning bodies smell. Because hair burning.
Go figure.
Just imagine the smell of a bunch of hair burning, guys.
And then all of the organs burning on top of the hair burning. Ugh.
Imagine
oh my god.
You burn a ham, but the ham is covered in hair still. It smells so bad.
So bad.
So bad. Because everyone I've heard, I was friends with someone who's learning cremation this summer.
Nice. Nice.
He was an odd man. Very odd man. Apparently if you're fatter, you you cremate better, in case you're wondering for your funeral plans.
I can believe that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. If you're skinny, it takes longer and higher heats to burn your body. Mm-hmm. But he's like telling me, he's like, yeah, you're burning this body. And he goes, it kind of smells really good. And I'm just like,
what?
Again, I told you he's an odd duck.
Oh my god.
He's a really odd duck. He was a mortician for a long time and then worked for Parks. It's fine. So Kate disposes of the spare foot, you just got the spare foot in the manure heap. And she's like, well, what do I do with this head? And she places it in a black bag.
Oh, no.
She continues to clean up the cottage on Monday and Tuesday, borrowing.
Oh, no.
We're doing Kate kind of borrowing.
Right, yes.
Which means it's now Kate's.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas's silk dresses and goes to visit the Porter family on Tuesday afternoon, her friends.
Right.
Bringing that black bag with her.
Oh, no.
She proceeds to tell them that she received some money from a will of an aunt who had left her house in Richmond and which she wanted to dispose of with all the contents. And then she was going to return to Ireland. So she's going to flee.
Oh, great. And she's telling people about it, too.
But Ireland's big enough. You could probably hide in there.
Yeah, no problem.
She asks Henry Porter if he knew a property broker who might be able to help her. And then goes off to visit another friend, returning later without the black bag, which was never found. So they don't know where the head is.
Oh, no.
We'll get to that.
Oh, no.
Don't worry, they found the head.
Oh, God. I don't know what's more upsetting, the fact that she just left it or the fact that I know that they found it. Oh, boy.
You're going to love who finds it.
Oh, no.
So both Henry and Robert, his son, carry the bag for Kate at various stages of their walk to the railway station. They also stopped at 2 pubs along the way, because Kate.
Right.
And they both were like, oh, this is very heavy, because it's a human head.
Yeah. I hear they weigh like 15 pounds or something crazy like that.
Which, when you think about it, our neck is amazing.
Right?
So now Kate just has to get rid of that box with the most of a human body in it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, hey, Robert Porter, can you help me with this? And they take turns carrying the box to Richmond Bridge, where Kate goes, I'm meeting someone who's gonna get this box. They want this box.
I don't think anyone wants that box.
And she tells Robert, I'll meet you later. Thank you so much. Go on home. And Robert's walking away, and all of a sudden he hears a splash of something heavy hitting the water. And then Kate catches up with him. Not even 5 minutes. Just wait until he's gone. It's not even a good attempt.
Oh my god.
Actually, this is kind of a good attempt, but just poorly executed after the fact.
Right.
So, the next morning, the box was discovered by a coal man who opens it to his regret.
Oh no.
And it's only been a couple of days, but I'm just imagining it doesn't smell great.
No.
Probably doesn't look great.
Yeah. Plus it was in water for 2 days. Or like 1 or 2 days. It's all soggy.
No, just overnight.
Oh.
Just overnight.
Oh my god. It's just sitting there.
So it's real fresh. Water-wise, not body-wise.
Yuck.
So the coal man goes to report his discovery to Inspector Harbour at the Barnes police station. And the police were like, and take it to a doctor who was like... You could just imagine they open, they're like, this is a body. Close it.
And call.
By the way, probably no gloves on.
Oh, no.
Nothing. Forensics aren't even a fart in their imagination. And the doctor was like, this is a female. And I'm like, well, if you got the torso and some bits, you could probably tell it's a female.
Right.
And he's like, it looks like the skin has been boiled. I was like, there you go. Look at you, doctor.
Someone knows what boiled skin looks like.
And then you just sit there and you're like, how do you know this? But because, the body's missing a head.
Right.
Kind of hard to figure out who is this body with minus a head and a foot. Kate has taken up calling herself Mrs. Thomas and just pretending to be the dead woman. Because... that'll work.
A foolproof plan for sure.
Yep.
Wow.
And she's like, Henry, let's get rid of all this property. So he introduces her to Mr. John Church, who was a general dealer. And she's like, buy everything. And he's like, I got it. I'm gonna buy everything in this house. On top of that, they became fast friends and were seen drinking together several times.
Words.
I'm not drunk. That's the sad thing. I just can't talk.
You have to get drunk to talk better. That's how it works.
In front of a microphone, sometimes, yes, it happens. So the mystery Barnes box is all over the newspaper, and Kate clearly knew it because she could read, because she went to Derek Zoolander's school for kids who can't read good and want to do other things good too. Actually, no, public education had become a thing. That's what that was, but...
No ants harmed in the making of this school project.
And, significantly, the Porter family could read as well.
Oh.
And they're like, something was found in a box in this river. And Robert's like, I helped Kate carry a box like this. Weird.
How odd. I'm sure that has nothing to do with anything.
No, they're all just sitting at the table like, it couldn't be Kate. Our friend Kate who likes to go drink in pubs and steal things. At this point, Kate has agreed on the price for the furniture because really until modern times, furniture hasn't been that disposable. So it was very valuable. And some of Mrs. Thomas's clothing with John Church, and he's like, okay, I got this. We'll come and take it out now. And remember our good old friend Mrs. Ives? She's like, this is weird. I haven't seen Mrs. Thomas in a while, and all of a sudden, all her stuff is leaving. Odd? And she tries to ask Kate what's going on. Kate, of course, is like, oh, she just told me I need to move all this stuff.
Right.
Which is weird because she fired her.
Right.
But so back at the Churches, Mrs. Church is going through the clothing, and she finds a purse and a diary belonging to Mrs. Thomas. On top of it was a letter from a Mr. Mehenik, who then Henry Porter and John Church paid a visit because they're like, we should figure out who this is because the clothing clearly isn't Kate's.
Right.
Mehenik knew the real Mrs. Thomas, and they figured out it was her body in the box. They're all like, the three dudes were sitting around, probably drinking some whiskey or some gross drink. And we're like, what does Mrs. Thomas look like? And the two men are just like, it's not who's there. And it's like, well, my son helped Kate carry a box that looks like that box in the newspaper. And they're all like, oh no, no.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So they go along with Mahenek's solicitor to the Richmond police station, and they were like, it's gonna sound crazy. And then they just tell them their suspicions. And the next day, the search of number 2 Vine Cottages was made. They found an axe, a razor, some charred bones, together with the missing handle of the box found in the river. So it looks like Kate's a little guilty.
Just a tad. Yikes.
And just a smidge.
Just a little bit.
You know, I think what really sealed it was the handle of the box.
Yeah.
They're like, ha-ha!
Exactly.
These bones and the axe and the razor.
No.
Nothing.
Nope.
The handle.
Mm-hmm. That's what did it.
On March 23rd, a full description of Kate Webster was circulated in the police, and they were like, suspect! Very suspicious suspect in this body that we found. Kate decides to flee to Ireland, taking her son with her, which, you know, she's Irish, so they're gonna look for her there.
Right.
And she's arrested on the 28th and is kept in custody, waiting collection by 2 detectives from Scotland Yard. She's brought back to England, taken to the Richmond police station, where she gives her statement on the 30th, and then is formally charged with murder.
Murder.
They really, like, the statement accused John Church of being responsible for the death as well, and so he's arrested and charged too, but he has a strong alibi, and he's like, I helped you! I legitimately helped you, because I was like, this is weird. My wife found this stuff, and if we hadn't looked into it, we would never know. And then the more you know.
The more you know.
Comes across. Kate is remanded into custody. She was transferred to Newgate Prison to save the journey of taking her across London every day for trial, because efficiency.
Oh, brother.
We begin her trial July 2nd, 1879, before Justice Demon at the Central Criminal Court, which is the Old Bailey, and you can look up her entire court transcript.
Wow.
Online. They've digitized the Old Bailey records.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing.
I want to have that job.
Go a little cross-eyed. I've transcribed. It's all transcription, because that stuff you can't use, like, if you scan a typed document now, you can use OCR to, like, pick up the letters. Right. Yeah, you can't do that with that because it's all handwritten.
Oh my god.
And before really the 1900s, you don't get good transference for that. Mm-hmm. Speaking as someone who studied the 18th century, and none of my documents were good for that, so any quotes were like typed with really that face. It was just like
pained expressions. Oh god.
Oh yes, podcasting's not a visual medium. Yes. It's a pained glancing at a faraway piece of paper as you're trying to type.
Visions of
Everyone's
death
done
in
that.
Their eyes. Yes, it's terrible.
So the crown was led by Solicitor General, which is rare because he's the top guy.
Oh.
Sir Hardinge Guilford, and Kate was defended by Mr. Warner Slay. Notice the difference. Yeah. We have a sir and a mister.
They threw in the mister to be nice because of the sir.
I know. It's proper. So on the 25th, a hatmaker gave evidence to the prosecution that on the 25th of February, Kate told her she was going to Birmingham to take control of property, jewelry, etc., left to her by a recently deceased aunt. So she's going with that story pretty hard. Oh. And
I mean, at least
the prosecution's claiming, yeah, you know, it's my aunt.
She's got her story straight. I mean,
she's on top of it. She's not pulling any changing stories bullshit. Yeah. So the prosecution claimed that there is premeditation because this was 6 days before the murder.
Oh, God.
And the real problem was proving that the human remains that they had found were actually those of Mrs. Thomas because, you know, no head.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main problem.
Yeah.
There's no head and she doesn't have tattoos.
True.
Or anything to identify her. So they gave medical evidence that, like, okay, this is all the same person. She's in her 50s, so, like, it's the right age. We haven't, like, kind of just putting some circumstantial evidence together, which held more weight.
Right.
The defense goes, Mrs. Thomas could have died of natural causes because she seemed really angry and annoyed when she left church.
Natural causes that end up with you in pieces in a box, you know.
You know, she panicked and put her in a box.
She just
after boiling her and cutting
boiled her own organs, like you do.
Yes. But really, Henry Porter and John Church were like, hey, this is what Kate made us do. And her defense turns around and they're like, well, why are they accusing Kate? They could have done it.
Oh.
They could have been benefiting from this. And I was like, ooh, that's a clever lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But the judge pointed out the actions and previously known good characters of both of them. Only 2 of Kate's friends, Sarah Crease and Lucy Lauder, gave evidence of Kate's good nature because she's been in prison a lot. And they're like, well, she's moved from thieving to murder to thief. On July 8th, so we're only 6 days into this trial, the jury retires to consider their verdict, returning over an hour later. So not great.
No.
And they pronounce her guilty.
Wow. Go figure.
I mean, I think their case was pretty good. They're like, she was living in the house, selling her stuff.
Wearing her clothes, trying to be her, so no one would notice.
Yeah. It's fine. I'm a 50-year-old woman. Before she was sentenced, Kate made a complete denial of the charges, but cleared Church and Porter of any involvement in the crime. So she was like, they clearly weren't involved. And I'm like, well, at least you're not being a dick to the end.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, before she was sentenced, she's like, I'm pregnant. Because claiming the belly will save your life.
The last-ditch effort.
Last-ditch effort. No one's going to execute a pregnant woman because we're all like,
Oh.
Everyone feels real bad.
Oh, God. Of course they do.
And I don't blame them.
Yeah.
So they go get a panel of matrons from some of the women present in the court, and they're like, go check her out. That's actually how they did it.
What?
Sometimes they'd get midwives, but sometimes they just get women in the area, like, who were there, and they're like, looking up there, checking her out, like...
I just lift up her skirt, and it's like, yup.
The baby's crowning. Oh my God. I'm so sorry for that one.
She has an aura about her. She just seems pregnant. I'm gonna say yes.
I feel like she just got a lot of her body touched, and she was like, please, can we not?
By, like, your neighbor and the woman who sells your breakfast.
Yeah,
just
yeah,
around.
and, like, none of them are certified to do this. But I love that they were like, we're gonna have women do it because it's delicate. But they don't have to know what they're doing, because women just know.
Yeah. Women's intuition. That's the whole thing, right? Am I doing this wrong? Have I been a woman this whole time if I haven't checked out if a woman's pregnant?
I just never ask. I just wait till someone tells me.
I have no gynecological experience, but if I just happen to be in town on a day where a woman's being convicted of murder, I will totally help out.
Just imagine it's someone's, like, day out in town. They just get dragged into this. Tell us if this woman's pregnant. What?
Do what now?
I'm pretty sure if you're, like, a lower class woman, you've helped with birth before, so you're like, well, I know what it looks like when someone's pregnant.
Right.
But they were like, yeah, no, she's not pregnant. So they transfer her back to Newgate and move her back to the actual prison of Wandsworth to await execution because she's not pregnant.
Right.
Again, I repeat, she's not pregnant.
Right.
And Kate was guarded around the clock by a team of female prison officers, so hey, gender equality.
Nice.
Mainly, it was gender equality in the form of sexism, but still.
It counts. It counts like a half point, but it counts.
So, Kate's like, I'm gonna confess twice.
Oh.
Twice. The first one, she's like, it was Strong, who's the father of my child. And the other, like, they were just like, no.
Denied.
So each time they're just like, what? Where are you pulling this from? Ma'am. And pretty much there is no chance for her to avoid being hung at this. Everyone is upset. The public is upset. The court is done with her shit.
That's fair.
And yeah. So she then gave another confession to her in the presence of a Catholic priest, which seems to be somewhat more true, so it's kind of more along the lines of what we know. Mm-hmm. And she was pretty much like, no, I'm good, I'm gonna die. I don't want to go back to how I was living. Granted, she wasn't living, like, very well. She's being a domestic servant, which is hard work, long days. You're working, like, 14-hour days. Ugh. If you've ever watched Below Deck on Bravo, it's kind of like that, but worse, and not on a boat. And, like, you have less rights.
Oh, jeez.
And no mandatory breaks.
Yikes.
And you don't get paid as well. So the actual execution of the sentence had changed a great deal over the 11 years between the ending of public hangings and Kate's death, even though the words of the sentence were not. So it's no longer a public spectacle where the prisoner is given a short drop and allowed to die in agony. So hanging. If you're really, really intrigued, listen to the last podcast on the left episode on executions. But short rope, you don't fall far enough to snap your neck. Long rope, you fall too far and then your head becomes a balloon.
Oh.
You need to hit that sweet spot. It's really hard to hit that sweet spot.
Yeah. I had no idea.
Which is why, it's fascinating.
Huh. It is fascinating. Don't laugh. I am so fascinated by that stuff.
You're just like, wait, how many people, who was the first person to find that sweet spot where it snapped the neck? Instead of, because they probably did really short and they're like, oh, that wasn't good. Yeah. And then they probably were like, well, maybe it just needs to be so much longer. And then the head popping thing happened. They're like, ooh, that was terrifying. And now you know why all the royal people had their heads cut off by French swordsmen, because they were like, we'll treat you well. Go quick.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's why you pay more for a better swordsman, because no one lets you practice that.
Weird.
Shocking. So you have William Marwood's long drop method, which was designed to break the neck and cause instant unconsciousness. The execution was set for the morning of Tuesday, July 29th. So, she finished her trial at the beginning of the month. She's being executed at the end of the month. And Kate was only to be the second person and the sole woman hung at that prison, Wadsworth.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. This is why they switched to, deportation, because there's so many reasons you could hang someone eventually, and they didn't like to hang women because it was sexist, but it was deemed improper, so it was really hard to you had to do something horrible, and so you don't hear a lot of women being hung, you hear a lot of men being hung, especially poor men. Yeah. So, a few minutes after 9 a.m., the prison governor, Captain Colville, prison doctor, 2 male warders, and Marwood formally met her outside her cell. Kate's being ministered by Father McEary, the one who she told her confession to, and 2 female wardresses, which is the female term of wardens. So, female prison guards. And she typically would have been offered a stiff tot of brandy before. So, you want a shot on your way out?
Anything helps, I guess.
Yep. She was led across the yard to execution shed, which was nicknamed the Cold Meat Shed. Yeah.
I have officially renamed my podcast studio.
The Cold Meat Shed.
Oh my
and
God.
It was really to spare, the reason why it was a separate building was to spare other prisoners the sound of the falling trap, and it's easier for the staff to deal with the execution of the body afterwards. So
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of just separate from the prison and it's easier to contain everything. She enters the shed and they create the noose. They set her up. They placed a leather body belt around her waist, which secured her wrists, and they secure her ankles so that way she can't move and she's not flailing everywhere. Right. She was supported by 2 warders standing on either plank set across the opening. So her last words apparently were, "Lord, have mercy on me." The lever was pulled. She dropped 8 feet. And Marwood actually used longer drops than were later found to be necessary, so she probably had either extension on her neck or was probably somewhat painful. Yikes. Her body was left to hang the usual hour. So because they weren't sure, they just left you for an hour so that by that way, you're clearly dead.
That's terrible.
I think if you live, you should just be allowed to, live.
Yeah, really.
They're like, we hung you.
We tried.
You survived.
Yikes.
They then proceeded to prepare the body for burial. Really, this whole process from taking her out to taking her in takes 2 minutes, which is insane.
What? Oh my God.
And the small crowd of people that had gathered around the prison to see if she died were told with a black flag hoisted upon the flagpole above the main gate. And this is really just because they were so used to going to watch them that they were like, let's go. And then they're like, oh, wait, we can't go in. Might as well stand around.
Oh my God. It's like, what was it, Bundy in the electric chair? Somebody in the electric chair. Yeah, there's a whole crowd outside.
Yeah. William Marwood received 11 pounds for hanging Kate, presumably 10 pounds plus 1 pound for expenses.
What? He got
her
paid
body
to hang her? What the heck?
Oh, yeah. No, because it was so hard to find people to do that job because for a long time. So you got paid a decent amount.
I gotcha. That makes sense, I guess.
But it just doesn't happen that often. So you get paid a decent amount, but you have to, like, do other things. So she's buried in an unmarked grave in one of the exercise yards of Wadworth. Nobody else was to be buried in the grave, although after the 90th execution, they did start reusing male graves, but not hers. Fun fact, she was the second person executed, but was buried in grave number 3 because they had even and odd sides, and they were just doing the odd sides first. Yeah.
I don't know why that's making me laugh so much, but that's really funny. That bothers my brain. Just do the first one, or the second one.
Yeah, they didn't want to keep going opposite sides, so they just did one side.
Oh my god.
So, of course, there are now street ballads about this, and H. Such, a printer in Southwark, issued a ballad called, quote, "The Murder and Mutilation of the Old Lady Near Barnes," end quote, after Kate had been arrested. And after her trial, he issued another ballad, and this is some of the words. "The terrible crime at Richmond at last on Catherine Webster now has been cast. Tried and found guilty, she is sentenced to die. From the strong hand of justice she cannot fly. She has tried all excuses, but no avail. About this and murder she's told many tales. She has tried to throw the blame on others as well, but with all her cunning, she is at last fell."
Oh my. Oh my.
Yep. So this shows, like, the issue between domestic servants as well and employers, because there's been a long history of tension. It comes up a lot throughout, from, like, the 16th century on. You just get these pamphlets where they're like, the servants, they're not working hard enough. They want money and a living wage and, like, reasonable hours. How dare they? And especially because that domestic servants were 40% of the female labor force.
Wow.
So, yeah. But when you pay them poorly, theft is often a problem with it as well. So you just see a lot of class divides in this case, and it comes up repeatedly in all the literature and popular culture about her. Remember I said we're going to talk about the head?
Yeah. I forgot about the head until just now. Oh no.
So, they found the head.
Oh god.
October. You want to guess what year?
No. Surprise me.
2010.
What? Oh my god. How did it take that long?
In the grounds of Sir David Attenborough's property in Park Road, Richmond, where he was working on an extension. I told you he was coming up.
I was so curious to see where he was going to fit in this whole thing.
Yep, they found a head on his property.
Oh my god. Wow.
So he had purchased a former pub called Hole in the Wall, which was adjacent to his property, and had demolished the rear of the pub. The workmen were carrying out excavation work, and they discovered a dark circular object.
Oh boy.
Which turned out to be a woman's skull. It had been buried underneath the foundations, which had been in place for at least 40 years, on the site of the pub stables. Immediately, everyone, like, hey, you think it could be? Like, it's so fun to look at the newspapers when they're like, skull found at David Attenborough's property, and everyone's like, say what now? They immediately take it to the police, who carry out an investigation. So in the US, if you find a body, you immediately call the police, but in the UK, after the Blitz, they determined that anytime you find bones or anything like that, you have to immediately do an archaeological survey to determine what it could be. That's how you always get these news stories of, hey, we found a plague pit. Well, making part of the tube. Because they find one piece, they have to shut down.
Oh, wow.
Which is how they've now found, like, so many more parts of their artifacts. And there's an entire, like, they found an entire part of Roman London that's preserved underneath a car park.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
So they take it to the University of Edinburgh, and they discovered it was between 1650 and 1880, and it had been deposited on top of a layer of Victorian tiles. The skull had been fractured with consistent with Webster's account of throwing Webster down the stairs, and it had low levels of collagen, which is consistent with being boiled.
Wow. After all that time, too.
In July 2011, the coroner actually concluded that the skull was indeed that of Thomas. DNA is not possible because she died childless, and they couldn't find any living relatives. Also, there's no records where the rest of her body was buried.
Wow, I'm sorry. Wow.
You're fine.
That's crazy.
Isn't that a turn? You're like, you just forget about the head.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, man. And then it's like, surprise! David Attenborough found it. Well, the workmen found it who were working on his house, but still.
Oh my god.
And we know that she liked to go to pubs. So she went to the pub and hid the head.
Oh my god.
How is it?
Cosmic irony. Wow.
I just love that they used, like, they can't, I mean, there's no 100% method of saying it's her,
Right.
but everything just lines up and they're like, well, she was known to go to this, like, area, to this pub and all this stuff, and it's like, it just makes sense.
It does. Wow.
So, now that I've amazed and traumatized you, do you want to plug your podcast?
Oh, sure. Oh, my goodness. How can I follow that up with my podcast?
You talk about murder a lot.
Well, sometimes, yeah, but it's not exactly real murder. It's a lot of fiction. I read stories. I review really bad movies. I interview indie artists. It's like this niche grab bag that's got literally something for anybody that wants to listen to it. So I have 2 blogs and I put them into a podcast, and I read stories and I review movies and I interview people, and sometimes there's cats. It's really cool. And I love what I do. And it's such a weird combination of all the stuff that I'm interested in that it's like too weird not to keep doing, because everyone's like, this is such a strange combination. Why do I enjoy this so much? So I just keep making it. So it's lots of fun.
And you're on Facebook and Twitter and all of that.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon. If you want to throw some money my way, I'm like everywhere. And then my podcast, you can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, any podcatcher out there. I've had it for like almost a year and a half now, so if not the most recent episode, you'll find an episode somewhere. I'm working right now on trying to get playlists together of all of my story episodes, my movie reviews, and then my Features Week episodes, like on Spotify, so that it's a little easier for people to get one kind of my content as opposed to listening to the whole thing and getting story, movie review, Features Week kind of thing. So, yep.
So check her out.
Hey folks, how's it going? My name is Augie, and I host a podcast called The Short Stories of Augie Peterson. Once upon a time, I had 2 blogs. Then one day, I started listening to podcasts. They seemed like a lot of fun and would combine the thing I was always afraid to share with the world, my writing, with the thing I had no choice but to share, my theater background. So I decided to combine them into a podcast for those millennials that don't have time to read 2 blogs. I read the original short horror stories I write every other Tuesday, and review really terrible horror movies from Netflix, Redbox, Amazon Prime, and even the dollar store with massive amounts of snark every other Thursday. On the first Saturday of each month, I tell my listeners about 5 new indie artists that I have interviewed that I think they should know about. So if you like terrible horror movies, learning about new artists, really good horror stories, and total nerds, this is the podcast for you. Check out The Short Stories of Augie Peterson wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, go to augiepeterson.wordpress.com. Toodaloo!
Hey, crime fans. This is Gemma Hoskins from The Keepers. I would like to invite you to take a listen to the new podcast series called The Redhead Murders. My friend, podcaster, Shane Waters, has invited me to work with him on this very cold case of women who were murdered 30-some years ago, all in the same area of the United States. Of course, being a redhead myself and being a practicing PI, sort of, I am delighted to work with Shane. So I'm inviting you to listen to the new Redhead Murders on Out of the Shadows podcast. You can also take a look at the Redhead Murders Facebook page. Please join us. Please try and help us. Over and out. Peace.
You can find our podcast, Out of the Shadows, in all podcast outlets. Visit us online at shadowspod.com. See you there.
Of Domesticity. We're available on all podcatchers. Remember to rate, review, subscribe to help spread the word, or just force other people to listen to it. Our Facebook and Twitter are at Domestic Podcasts, and our Instagram is at the Cult of Domesticity. We also have podcast merch at Threadless. As well, if you want to support us financially or show some appreciation, we have a PayPal tip jar and a Patreon, which has some pretty great perks. Any topic suggestions, feel free to email us at domesticpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to stay domestic and cult-free.